and Imams and scholars and community members, parents, all of you. Allah Ta'ala, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul, wa ulil amri minkum. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, O you who believe, obey Allah and obey His messengers, and those who have been appointed with authority amongst you. And this is an example of the third, because I would never give this talk amongst this audience, except inshallah the instructions of Sheikh Adly to share some thoughts with you inshallah, out of respect inshallah for him. So today inshallah I'm intending on speaking about technology and techniques for sharing Islam. And my main objectives for a talk are two. Number one, to speak about some of the Quranic methodology of some aspects of da'wah. Da'wah is an enormous topic. I don't want to even pretend to do any justice to the topic. We'll just focus on some elements of it. And I think, as many of you can relate to, with all of the challenges of da'wah today, many of us find ourselves confronted with challenges and difficult decisions. And so I'll try to motivate just a little bit about some aspects of the Quranic methodology for da'wah. And I think the closer we are to the methodology of the Quran, the closer we are, inshallah, to what is pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Messenger.
I think feedback is it.
I'll finish, inshallah. I'll stay here, inshallah.
Sorry for being short.
Secondly, inshallah, I'm going to try to make it a very practical talk, and so I will not go too long in that segment because we have little time, and share with you some of the work that either has been done at the Islamic Association of Raleigh, or by colleague Imams across the country. I was blessed before joining the Carolina community to travel extensively throughout the country, and so look for good models. And so I want to share whatever is of use to you, inshallah, today. We can make it available offline, inshallah, for anything that would help your communities. So if you have any thoughts as we go forward, please feel free to hop in at any time. But the supplementary comments or deeper discussion, I would humbly request that you wait till the end, inshallah. We'll leave a section dedicated for questions and answers. But for shorter questions, feel free to volunteer at any time. And so, we have the ayah in Surah An-Nahl, أُدْعُ إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. The meaning of which could be translated as, call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good teaching. And this command, like many commands of the Holy Quran, is directed first and foremost at the Prophet ﷺ. However, the scholars extract some of the meaning and the wisdom for all of us who are following the Sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ to follow the same methodology. And as I said, I won't give an exhaustive description of da'wah. I'm intending to keep this practical in the short time we have. But da'wah in the Arabic language comes from the meaning to invite or to call. And so part of our responsibility as Muslims, you find the scholars classically talk about da'wah as invitation of other people to the way of the ummah of Rasulullah ﷺ, to the Quran and to the Sunnah. However, in the broader sense of the concept, we can really also think about a lot of what we discussed today in terms of calling and inviting many of our fellow Muslims, who alhamdulillah Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed with La ilaha illallah, but many of them are struggling with sin, or as was mentioned earlier, with not being upon the Quran and Sunnah. And these are not strangers. Most of us have family, have friends that would fall either under not being Muslim in the first place, or not praying or engaging in serious sins. And so part of the motivation for today's topic is a very personal one, to invite people and to convey this beautiful message that is the most valuable thing that we have to others and to our people, and to exercise our responsibility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jal emphasizes in this ayah two elements, al-hikmah and al-maw'idha al-hasana. And al-hikmah in language means wisdom. And some of the scholars in tafsir have commented that here it could mean the Quran and the Sunnah. And then when you look at al-maw'idha al-hasana, the good teaching or good reminder, some scholars in tafsir suggests that this is actually the realities and the experiences in life that are indicated by the Quran and by the Sunnah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to these scholars, commended that the Prophet ﷺ, and by extension we, are able to convey the Quran and Sunnah in a way that addresses people's reality. And this is a complex topic. No doubt we are confronted with decisions where we don't want to fall into what's not permissible. And that's why I'm not even pretending to talk about the scope of this topic today. However, as a start, we learn from this ayah that we should be able to relate to people's experiences in whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal and permissible. And I believe, sadly, when you look at the open season that it is for Muslims today, part of this speaks to our failure to be able to relate Islam to our people without compromising the message, without changing the message. And just as an example that I learned from a colleague, Imam, there was a session which was speaking to non-Muslims. And the talk was actually going very well, and people were very receptive. And there was one person in the audience that had a more antagonistic view of Islam, and was visibly upset that the talk was going well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a reality in the Quran. You see enemies of Allah and His Messenger, you see people that dislike, but so many people are lost in the middle. So this person, she raised her hand and she said, yes, I know that Muslims are under attack and so on, but is this really blown out of proportion? And she made some very demeaning comments. So the Imam, Allah blessed him in that moment with something I could imagine could be under this Maw'id al-Hasanah. He knew that woman had identified herself as a Jewish woman earlier in the sin. So Allah Azza wa Jal opened for him a response. He said, Alhamdulillah, we're thankful that Muslims in America have not been tested in the way that some people have been tested in the past, including in our tradition. Some of the difficulty the Sahaba went through, including, other things. But he said, I would hate to be like the people that watched in society in the time before any of these tragedies that I've mentioned. And he mentioned slavery. And he mentioned things. Among the things he mentioned was the people that were silent about the persecution of the Jews before the Holocaust. I think about this as a Maw'id al-Hasanah because the woman was unable to respond. When he related the Islamic concept to her experience, it was very powerful. Or talking about, in our own American history, the fact that some of the founders of America had a copy of the Quran. There are historical documents where they talk about the existence of Islam and talk about its space here. And so all of these are supplementary ways for being able to convey the core of our message, which always will be and will never be compromised, the Quran and the Sunnah. And a teacher, Sheikh Khamis Abdul Hamid Hassanin, once shared with me a reflection, not a tafsir of this ayah. He told me, son, imagine that when you have al-Maw'id al-Hasana, think about this as the right answer. He told me, think about someone asks you a fiqh question, you have the knowledge to answer. Someone asks you about Islam, you have the knowledge to answer. Imagine al-hikmah as the way this answer is conveyed. And many people have the right answer, but destroy the message because they are unable to convey. And this is related to an ayah in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about not just the command of da'wah, but the form that the da'wah should be in. And He says, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين. You can see the full translation there. I'll focus on the first part of the ayah. And this ayah, the occasion of revelation, is a very, very difficult time in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, which was, according to many scholars, after Ghazwat Uhud, as are many of the ayat in the second half or the latter half of Surah Ali Imran, where this ayah is from. And after consulting with the companions, and especially some of the younger companions who were very eager to go out from Medina and meet the aggressing kuffar, Uhud had the challenges that we all know in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So it could have been imagined by some that this consultation and this inclination and openness to the Sahaba could have been among the causes of difficulty or hardship. And indeed the difficulties of Uhud, as many of you know, were not limited to that period, but it extended for at least 2 years and some well beyond in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And yet in this difficult environment, Allah Azza wa Jal emphasizes that it was from His great rahmah, from His mercy, that the Prophet ﷺ was lenient with these Sahaba. And He mentions, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And so these are some of the forms that take a beautiful message. Because the deficiency, my brothers and sisters, and allow me to be explicit if respectful, the deficiency, of course, we know is never in the Quran. The deficiency is never in the Sunnah, astaghfirullah al-azim. And I say this not by disrespect, by emphasis. That if there are the enemies of Islam in America and across the world, if there are the tyrants and the fir'auns of the world, when 3/4 of people, half of people, whole societies don't know who are Islam and Muslims, the issue is not the message itself, the issue is the messengers, us, lowercase m messengers, who are failing to convey Islam to people. They have a basic understanding, as one of a failed lawyer. And so we're looking at what are our roles that we can better convey the message. And here, Fadlan is translated here, Sahih International Translation, as rude in speech. But actually the scholars mention that al-fadl is the liquid within the camel's stomach. And you know, if you look at the camel, from Allah Azza wa Jal's miracle with this animal is that it's like the boat of the desert. And it can go for extended periods of time without drinking water. And after it exhausts the immediate water reserves that it has organs within its body where it can draw on literally stored water. And this stored water is called al-fadl. And in fact, you know, in a famous story for Khalid ibn al-Walid and the Muslim army, radiyallahu anil jamia', that during a long journey through a treacherous stretch, they used this. They slaughtered the camels and used those stored water reserves for drinking. It can be consumed by humans, but it's easier to consume by animals. They're more resistant to the challenges with it. And they used it to cross a treacherous stretch of desert where there was no water for a number of days. But this water, although it's drinkable, it has a noticeably bitter taste. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word as a description of the bitterness and the poor choice of word in conveying the message. And then after this, the scholars mention that the consequence of these words is mentioned after it, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, to have a hard heart. Because a person that conveys in this manner and speaks in this manner, eventually the outcome is that it hardens the heart and then stems from a hard heart. And so Allah Azza wa Jalla says, if even the great Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam were to have such characteristics, لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, they would have scattered from around you. And then to the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands him what the proper conduct is instead. A word about the tools of da'wah as we move into some of the practical steps that I'd like to share with you today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ibrahim, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. That we have not sent a messenger to their people except with their tongue, that they may explain and convey clearly for them. And the meanings encompassed by this ayah are many. Of course, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was sent among the Arabs and did not speak all of the languages of the world, right? And so each prophet was sent with the language of their people, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was sent with the language of his of Arabic, and yet his ummah was given the responsibility for conveying the message to all of humanity. But the scholars extract many other dimensions of meaning from this ayah. And among them is that the prophets had the cultural competence and understanding how to relate to their people. The Prophet ﷺ, as we know, before prophethood, is nicknamed As-Sadiq Al-Amin, the honest, the trustworthy, and so many beautiful stories among his people that he was known for his good character and his standing amongst people. And so ultimately, while not violating the norms and the regulations of our Sharia, if we are not known to our people within what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted, then why should they accept what we have come from? And in fact, what we have come with. And even in another ayah in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that Allah Azza wa Jal selected among the messengers the people of the cities. And so they were people of known lineage and people of known standing, and they were able to use that to convey to their people. And so much of what we're talking about is just the first step in a long journey. Today is a discussion, not a lecture, because I don't know how to complete this journey, but I'm presenting before you this challenge that I think could not be more timely than these times, inshallah, on how we can really have the tongue of our people, so we can convey an understanding of Islam in a way that is relevant and relatable to the American people. And to be clear, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger have stated something, then there is no room for discussion. And so I'm stating a concept, perhaps in the January meeting, Sheikh Adly, inshallah, will have the opportunity to educate us more on details. But as a concept, where Allah and His Messenger have not given latitude, then there isn't latitude for us to use what could be potentially, from a dunya sense, useful da'wah tools. And so you look at marketing and advertising agencies. They do many things that actually bring followers. But in it is violations of Sharia, such as, people not observing the appropriate hayat or interactions that are not permissible. And so this is where we stop. This is where we stop because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger did not leave latitude. But where our scholars have left, have understood that the Quran and Sunnah have left latitude, then we have to be critical of ourselves and have the courage to have the discussion. How can we be more effective in conveying this message to these people that, like it or not, clearly have no understanding of Islam and really no clue? And I'll share with you just an anecdote, a short story, that hoping what comes from the heart goes to the heart. A few weeks ago, I was humbled and blessed to be invited to address the Association Executives of North Carolina. And this is a group of CEOs and high-level leaders of companies across a lot of different trades. And so reporting to them are tens of thousands of employees. So most of the audience was in their 50s and 60s, rich, highly educated. The event was all about Islam, and it was supposed to go about 30 to 60 minutes. It extended for 2.5 hours. And I reflected to myself, what a real shortcoming on our part. These are not the simple people. These are not the people that have been working since grade school, didn't have access to education. These are some very rich, highly educated people that are asking grade school questions about Islam. I'm not saying this debasing them, I'm saying they don't know the basics of the basics. Is Islam tolerant? What does Islam say about Ibrahim and Isa and Musa? The most basic things. Do you believe in one God? And afterwards a person came up to me and he shared with me a word that I want to share with you, inshallah, motivation for our discussion today. He said, the message about Islam that was shared with us tonight needs to reach millions of people. And you have to learn to define Islam for yourselves. Much of today's talk is about the definition of Islam being wrestled away from us and done by people who have no clue about Islam and don't have our best interest in mind, or people's best interest. It is a testament to the area for us to grow as religious leaders in communities that when CNN and the media want an expert on Sharia, they bring white Christian men to talk about that. Not imams, not scholars, not people with any training. And he shared with me a word that if you forget everything from today, perhaps remember the ayat and the hadith and just this thought I'm sharing with you. He said the only way that will change is one person at a time. And I smiled because he reminded me that really Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had taught us something greater in better words, but I had never reflected on this. The great hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, لأن يهدي بهداك رجلا واحدا خير لك من حمر النعم. جزاك الله خير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide with you through you one person is better for you than Humr al-Na'am. Sheikh Adly, you know Humr al-Na'am is from the difficult translations. Right, the red camels. And so I say to our young people that haven't been on a camel before, it's like the luxury cars to the Arabs, right? That these camels were their transportation through the desert, and these red ones were like the prized ones. So maybe this could be like, I don't know, I don't drive fancy cars, but I hear there's Rolls Royces and Jaguars. And this is one person. And so much of our discussion today is to value what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could open for us one person at a time, and not to always wait for the cameras of the media or the leadership or so on among people. And also the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I see we're, just for time inshallah, we'll move to the next section of the talk. But just to mention the first part of this hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, فُضِّلْتُ عَلَى الْأَنْبِيَاءِ بِسِتٍ, that he was given preference and superiority over the prophets with 6 qualities. The first that we'll mention is أُعْطِيتُ جَوَامِعَ الْكَلِمِ. I was given جَوَامِعَ الْكَلِمِ. The scholars, some of them say that this is the Quran itself, and other scholars say that this is the capacity to express vast meanings in very few and eloquent words. And of course, this description, nothing would be more befitting of this than the Holy Quran, which is incomparable to any other speech. But even the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you see the scholars, a few short words, they take months and months to describe it from the great meanings of these ayat. So I want to, inshallah, move to the second part of the talk. And so I want to ask you, there's 5 photographs here. On the topic today, what do you think all of these 5 have in common? On the top you see a teacher in the masjid teaching about Islam. On the bottom, a person planting and working the fields. Towards the top, that's a picture of Al-Baqiyah, the known graveyard in Medina Munawwara. On the bottom right, people in sujood, and on the top right, a person conducting business and carrying his wares. What do these all have in common? Relevant to the topic today. What can we learn?
It brought to my mind, if you allow me to
Please,
say,
of course.
a verse in the Quran, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ.
Beautiful reflection.
Everything that in your life is a virtue.
Yeah. Beautiful reflections.
total submission to Allah. منها خلقناكم وفيها نعيدكم.
شو السؤال العربي؟
الشيء المشترك بين كل هذه الصور. Yes. Yes, you mentioned all of them have room for growth. It was mentioned by Adly.
جعلت الأرض لكم مسجدا أو طهورا بما معناه.
And so the photos have many things in common. I think these are all beautiful reflections. From a tarbiyah and teaching perspective, I want you to look at this from the lens of the Prophet, of the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and notice that the likenesses of these things during his time, each of them have at least one, if not more, ahadith narrated about him teaching something in each of these stations. Let me say that again. Each of these photos, if you take the equivalents at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you will find one and often many more ahadith where the Prophet ﷺ teaches in that environment. And from the challenges of da'wah, I would suggest to you in our time, is that, and I will share with you, when I was first asked to, serve as Imam, as with any transition in life, I was very overwhelmed, so I was asking some of our senior brothers and so on, and trying to prepare. So I think many of our senior will laugh at hearing this story. But the month before, I was, reviewing all the fiqh books and the classes that we took in school and the opinions of the Sheikh, imagining that the most important thing that one does is to speak on a microphone and lecture and answer fiqh questions all day. This is what I imagine teaching to be. And then, when the responsibility was before me, I remembered this dimension of the sunnah that many of us have forgotten. The Prophet ﷺ and the Prophets in general were the best of orators, the best speakers. And yet so much of their teaching did not only happen on the minbar. Did not only happen, as in the, top left, if you will, teaching in the masjid. Many important ahadith did. But how many ahadith do we see him, walking with the companions, seeing to their needs? How many do we see where they're coming with business disputes and issues? The beautiful hadith, among others, in Al-Baqiyah, where as he's completes burying the companion, they see the earth beneath him wet with his tears. And he says, Ya ikhwani, limithli hadha fa'a'iddu. My brothers, for the likeness of this moment, prepare yourself. That's a lesson that could be heavier than 1,000 khutbah. And these dimensions of da'wah are not to be forgotten, and it's in that light that I have tried to share some of these dimensions, just by way of discussion. Inshallah, look forward to hearing from all of you as well. Just a word of respectful caution, especially to the imams in this area. I'm going to share a bunch of different suggestions and ideas. We should be respectful to the spectrum of scholarly thought, even around something simple like uploading a video to YouTube or using Facebook. I'm respectful to the ulama that discuss all of these issues. We have to be consistent with the Quran and Sunnah, but they're not explicit commands. And so there's discussion about the harm and the benefit that come from each. And so I am not giving these from a fiqh perspective. I'm just motivating some things that certainly some ulama have allowed some of the imams in the room use these things. But I would advise everyone to evaluate, inshaAllah, their individual situation, inshaAllah. So I want to talk about a few practical challenges and a few practical tools to help us with some of the challenges that we face in our masajid. And I would humbly suggest to especially my brothers and leaders in the CIC that I think this is from the opportunities that Allah has blessed us with in the Carolinas to exchange, and alhamdulillah, have these meetings multiple times a year for us to learn from our seniors and to share problems and challenges, because I think we'll find commonality, and I think we'll find in shura and cooperation much stronger solutions than in isolation. And many brothers and sisters that I meet as I've traveled the United States in different masajid, they really face these challenges in isolation and don't know that there are others where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened some solutions, some ideas that they could really benefit from. And so I'll mention a couple quickly and then open the floor inshallah for your thoughts and ideas. Anything that you see here that is of benefit to any of the masajid, you know, we're an open book, alhamdulillah. We can share it with you and send it out. Anything, you can change it and modify it to fit your needs. But I've tried to share broadly to meet as many people's needs as useful. So one practical challenge, switching gears to the, you know, some of the hands-on part of the talk. One practical challenge we find in the masjid is communication. Sheikh Adly, I was humbled when you put all those cards out in front, which is a really beautiful thing that people are standing in support of the masjid. But if there's no response from us, we realize this could be offensive and not our complete duty, inshallah, towards these people. And also with email and so on and phones, subhanAllah, I have an Imam colleague who received a call at 3 a.m. And the person said, Imam, subhanAllah, a very difficult situation. He said, you know, I've just been stabbed, I'm bleeding. 3 a.m. The Imam was very concerned for him, but he said, you know, son, why didn't you call, like, 911, call some help, right? And so also, it's not healthy as our communities grow larger and larger, that everything funnels through the Imam, until if the community gets large enough, I'm not saying religious issues, I'm saying logistical issues and so on. If we don't operate as a team, this works for small communities, but really starts to expose us with larger communities where everybody needs to have a team. And if anyone could have operated by himself, it would have been the Prophets or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And yet even they had Sahaba and companions and help. So one thing we've done, and we can make this available to anyone who's interested, is we've tracked the most common email requests and created template responses. So that you point, click, it pastes the email automatically, and then you modify the name and so on, because now, you know, at IAR, we get several hundred emails per day. And so do the math yourself. If that takes, you know, a couple minutes per email, that's already a full-time employee doing nothing but this all day. And many imams get trapped in this and don't see to their other responsibilities. And so I've put here a nice little feature on Gmail, or other apps have these features too, called canned responses, where you write a response and then set up the client so that you point, click, it gives you that response so you're not constantly redoing it, and then you can always modify it with the person's name. And so those are the most common requests we receive at IAR. For example, people come with social and welfare requests. And I've made the decision at IAR to give all of the financial responsibilities to others. And so as Imam, I'm able to relate to people, but if people come asking for money, we put everyone through the same process, because a larger community, and that process, you know, we look over the Sharia aspects of it, but not the logistics. And so having, you know, used this dozens of times, that kind of thing is helpful. Similarly, our process for nikah, for you know, the marriage contract, for a lot of these things. And so if any of these drafts, Islamic will, any of these drafts are helpful for you, we're helpful to make them available. I also mentioned to you last time that, and it's come up actually in this morning's discussion, getting the word out. And I think a big challenge now is to get the word out as many useful ways as possible, so people don't have an excuse to not come. And so we have a very diverse community, and so while being respectful to people that, you know, look at the bulletin board and so on, we went ahead and put this in the lobby, a 4-foot poster, so that people could know a lot of the weekly activities that we target at the whole community, while using other tools that come later, such as email and website and Facebook, as I'll talk about. But this actually is a really obvious step, but it made a really big difference at our masjid. I remember also last year here visiting the Islamic Center in Colombia, you know, actually looking through the weekly lessons in the bulletin board, and so it's really a big touch point for a lot of people who are coming in and out for Salah anyway, coming in and out for Jumu'ah anyway. And so even if it's a sheet of paper, I would encourage you not to overlook this very simple but powerful tool to make sure to get that message out, and don't assume that people know and they're lazy. Some people end up being lazy and some people end up not being interested, but at least we discharge our responsibility the halaqat and the durus and whatever you think applies to most people, I'd encourage you to make it available. I also wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about something that a lot of you have asked about, which has been one of our main thrusts at IAR this year, which is counseling and mental health. And I recognize that in this area, in this meeting, we have a diverse, array of sizes of masajid. Okay, but I've tried to illustrate different aspects of the process so that you can take whatever is useful and think about what might be in your future. Even if some of the smaller centers, this full solution may not be the appropriate one. But at IAR, we were tracking counseling, and when you speak to our senior imams, for those of you that don't know, an enormous amount of time, of the imam's time, is taken in private counseling and dispute resolution. And these parts, by nature, the imams cannot get up and talk about them because it's in confidence, right? And they're protecting people's secrets. And never should any of us look that we're above this, or beyond this, or only do the spotlight things. The Prophet ﷺ, solved people's problems and helped their disputes, an important part. But the challenge is, you go back to the 80s and earlier, our communities, many of them were much smaller. And so their needs were well met by a single point of contact, the imam, right? In addition, especially our youth had less risky behaviors. And you can look at the Family and Youth Institute, which is a Muslim non-profit organization, and I'm sad to say you will be very shocked at the results of their study of Muslim college students and the percentages engaging in very high-risk behaviors, such as substance abuse, drugs, zina. Some of these things reach 40 and 50% of survey respondents, claiming not to have thought about it, to have done these ma'asi. So it could be said that as a community overall, there was less breadth of these risky behaviors. There were problems, there were challenges, marriage issues and so on. But all of the things I mentioned today, these are not theories. In the last year at the IAR, and in the previous 30 under Sheikh Bayanuni, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease his hardship. All of these are real things. And so at IAR we found that it's overwhelming the volume of resources, so we tried to leverage the Muslim counselors and specialists in our community who train for this type of work. And I want to be very, very clear. This is not to say we found a better way to do it. This is not to say that the old model does not work. Actually, what it really is to say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the older generation with a bigger challenge than He tested the younger generation with. 30 years ago, imams did not have these types of resources, did not have that type of specialization in the community, but now we do. And so can we talk about another process for how to do this? And so, what we've done, and we can make this available to CIC if I think we offered this and people wanted it last time, but we've prepared a list of marriage counseling resources. Even if you are in a small community, there are a number of Muslim institutions and counselors who offer marriage counseling over Skype or teleconference or online. And so after, as an imam, a person gives general advice or rules on any Islamic issues or Sharia issues, you could have a couple that has 8, 10, 20 hours of learning how to communicate, learning how to build trust and how to build, rebuild the house. If the imam is able to keep up with the demands of the community, alhamdulillah. But if not, this is another model where we hand off to some institutions and some private practices who are Muslim, who are aware of Muslim norms, and they're not Sharia specialists per se, but they're aware of the basics, and so after you get the Sharia part, and in our experience, I've never had a marriage counseling situation where the Sharia part lasted more than half hour. But the communication and the rebuilding part can last 8, 10, dozens of hours, and so this is an opportunity to leverage those people. And so, This is a new system, which again, for some centers you can imagine as an imagination of one day, inshallah, but we are moving at the IAR from having the imams be the first line of defense for counseling requests. And people still come to the imams, no doubt, but we hand them off a process where they start by going through a standard system and clarifying what type of service they want. At a very broad level, without describing the problem. Is it a marriage issue? Is it a youth behavior issue? Is it substances, etc., etc.? And that catalogs everything we're doing. To be clear, some of the elders of our community or people that don't have internet access, we have people assist them to do that because we have to be respectful, but that's maybe less than 5% of the community. And so there's an opportunity for those people to be assisted by an assistant, but everyone else goes online and that's how they get an appointment. They also go through an automated system to then get an appointment. Their first meeting is not with the imam. It's with a small group of trusted, vetted Muslim health professionals who take turns volunteering for short meetings at our masjid and decide what's the next step. And if it has something to do with Sharia, the next step is to meet with the imam for the Sharia component. But so many people are looking for resources out in the community or looking for some of our marriage practitioners. We have now in our communities, many of them, Muslim psychiatrists, Muslim professionals, Muslim people that specialize in some of the Islamic aspects of may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, drugs or things like that. And so we are more fully leveraging those people while still supervising and owning the overall process. And this is an ongoing thing. Alhamdulillah, it was just approved by our Shura and we've started to phase in elements of this. Inshallah, we can keep you updated. But it's our hope actually that this goes beyond the IAR and is a resource to communities. It was recently presented at ISNA convention a couple months back. It has been submitted for the Chicago convention and inshallah, trying to make this available as a resource for communities and also here at the CIC. So maybe I'll skip this. I talked a little bit about how the Imam does. I'll just close inshallah for time with a couple practical tools and then open the floor inshallah for your esteemed comments and thoughts inshallah. Some practical suggestions for all of our masajid. I humbly suggest that every masjid here, if you're not on the web, that you make it a priority to make a website for the masjid. And there are free tools. You don't have to hire someone or have a lot of money. One of them is called Wix.com, W-I-X.com. Here you have a screenshot, I didn't know, traveling from out of town, didn't know the times of Salah in Colombia. Alhamdulillah, quick search and I found, the masjid website here, which I put here on the left. And you can see also people know that the workshop is happening today and know the different services and so on. This is very, very important. So even if it's a bare bones website, especially as Muslims are traveling more and no one can know where all the masajid are, I encourage you both to put a website up and to consider listing with a number of the masjid locator services such as Islamic Finder and so on, because these are hit, many of them thousands and thousands of times a day. Especially around the prayer times, it generates a lot of traffic to the website. And since that website, then they're already there to find out the times of the salah. For me personally, I found out, there's a CIC a flyer without intending to find that on the website. And so it's a big opportunity, inshallah, as an opportunity to build your email lists. Also, really, I'm humbled, mashallah, by the efforts here in the center here. YouTube is a very powerful tool for the lectures and lessons that you're giving anyway. And doesn't mean that everything goes up there, but the things that can affect people, often you can really broaden your reach and provide it as a service even within your community. We have a number of elders who find it very, very difficult to come to the masjid as often as they would like, and they have been very appreciative that many of our lessons and our khutbah are now all online, and they tune in, some of them live, if they are not able, or people that are in the outskirts of the city, maybe they come for Jumu'ah, but they're not able to come for other lessons, and they touch on that. And here, is Sheikh Adly's YouTube page, and mashallah, tabarakallah, just taking this as an example, in just 6 to 7 years, Alhamdulillah, as of this morning, there were 118,000 views of the videos on this page. Okay? And that's not in the full spectrum of time that he's been blessed to be in this work, not to include the books and so on. And so this is not to be understated. Of course, YouTube brings its pluses and minuses. I'll leave you to do that. But virtually any young person in your community knows how to use this. And so don't let it be an intimidation. Actually, it can be a great opportunity to mentor a young person, bring them along so they listen to the lecture anyway. And anybody with this, device can get you going on YouTube without anything else. Doesn't take fanciness, doesn't take $1,000. And really, these cameras now on the phones are just as good as all the expensive stuff. And so really a very practical tool. I have to change his title now. It's called Fake Book. I think Fake Book is a much better title, because especially after all the fake news, there was all over it this time. But this is a new thing for IR. I just learned also that the Sheikh uses it here at this community, and I recommend against making it your only means of communication, because a lot of groups in the community are not on this, or not using it. But many people that are here are not elsewhere. They're tuned out from Jummah announcements, they don't look at the bulletin boards, and so it's a real opportunity, inshallah, to reach a new audience. The downside of Facebook is it takes time. And so I encourage you to start something, because they orient everything around pay. And so if we don't pay, we go organic. And so it takes time. So I encourage you to start something bare bones, rather than wait to start something fancy. Because no matter what, it takes months and years to build a following, especially with their new thing. And this is also, Twitter is a similar story. You can link the two. I will close, inshallah, with a comment about live streaming. And this is really in the last year to two that live streaming has become cheaper and more accessible for masajid than even 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so the one we use at IR, they each have their pluses and minuses. The ones we use at IR is called Periscope. Its benefit is that it's totally free. You can do public broadcasts and you can do private broadcasts. The downside is that everybody has to set up the thing, and I've put here a tutorial you could use at your masajid to provide to your community. But that's how we've been live streaming our Jummah Khutab, alhamdulillah, and privately streaming some of our classes. So some of our classes that are week to week, we don't publicly stream them, but we have some students that have health issues and so on. And so if they're committed to coming to class every week, we can privately stream to them using Periscope. There are other tools. I won't go into all the pluses and minuses here, but Facebook and YouTube also have live streaming tools. And for fancier offerings, there's livestream.com. And so,
by the way, you are on the air.
I am on the air. Which, do you mind if we ask which app you're using? YouTube or? Facebook. events. Alhamdulillah, so that's...
Ustream also, you understand?
Ustream, that's right. I didn't mention that. So Sheikh mentioned Ustream, the letter Ustream.com. And the one that he's using is the third one right now, the Facebook Live or Facebook events, mashallah. And so this is streaming live to his followership. And so these are all mostly free tools that you can use, inshallah, and just a simple tutorial, or get one of the young people in the community involved. It'll be a really great project for them to help out, inshallah. I had some other things, but inshallah I want to leave plenty of time for your comments. And so I'll just close with this ayah. I always reflect on the closing of Surah Ash-Shu'ara, which is a surah that talks a lot about communication and dialogue between the prophets and their people. And its closing ayat, among the most powerful tools of communication during the time of the Prophet ﷺ was ash-shi'r, poetry. They were unmatched in language. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticized many of the poets, right? And many of them, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ. You see people that just, with the proliferation of communication, they just talk here and there and talk without knowledge and get into all kinds of trouble. And many people speak with that which they don't do. Their words are not congruent with their actions. And Allah Azza wa Jal exempted the people that do not fit this characteristic who are the people of Iman, the people of Al-Amal al-Salih, and the people of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until the end of the ayah. And so I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal that with these really unprecedented tools of communication and with this heavy responsibility of conveying Islam to our neighbors and our families and our community members, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us firm Iman and grants us steadfastness and tabat in these difficult times, and inshallah allows us to be used as vehicles of sharing this beautiful message of Islam. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khairan, and inshallah open the floor for any thoughts.
شيخنا في كل واد يهيمون حالة عامة. الشعراء يتبعهم الغاوون في كل واد يهيمون، هي حالة عامة.
ذكر في التفسير أن يعني من ضمن الخواطر على التفسير أنهم في كلامهم يعني يتبعون في كل واد يعني كل موضوع وكل كلامه. الآية التي تليها أيضا تكمل يعني الموضوع. ولو أحد العلماء يحب يعني يذكر شيء من التفسير في الآية الكريمة فليتفضل إن شاء الله.
يعني هون تعارض مع الشعر، الدين مع الشعر في تعارض؟
لا، لأن في استثناء في آخر الآيات. بعض الشعراء كانوا
في شعر للرسول حسان بن ثابت.
صحيح؟ صح. جزاك الله خير. فتح الله عليك. The brother, just for those who don't speak Arabic, the brother asked, about, you can see the middle ayat are critical of many of the poets. And so he was mentioning, is this a criticism of all poetry or of the vehicle? Of all of the poetry. And the exception is very clear at the end, that many poets and many great communicators and many media personalities get a lot of sins and make a lot of problems, but the people of Iman and good deeds and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were very righteous poets. And even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as our brother mentioned, the Greek companion Hassan ibn Thabit was used by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for good poetry and even for confronting others. And some of the khutbah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam companions were also used for lectures and sermons in competition with others. And so they mastered these vehicles and use them for good, just as other people use them for evil.
I just wanted to mention that one of the greatest forms of dawah is behavior and the character of the Muslim and the way that we interact with other people. Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world, was not the result of dayas, it was the result of businessmen who acted like Muslims and practiced their deen, and the people questioned and followed as a result. Our behavior and not cheating the people and treating people kindly, following the characteristic of Rasulullah is the greatest dawah that we can do.
Very important point. And I forgot to mention, barakallahu fiki, that this was mentioned by the ulama in the tafsir of the ayat, that we mentioned in the beginning that da'wah should not be considered only by words, but in fact that even the da'wah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was understood to be da'wah by speech and words, but also da'wah through behavior and action. So jazakumullah khairan for this important reflection.
Do you have anything to say before we close? If I have to say any comments in addition to being well done lecture and benefit a lot from it, that I think is very important before the da'wah that we as Muslims understand, we know the reward and the virtues of da'wah. Because you are not going to give da'wah because it's going to require some of your time, some of your effort, some of your money, all these things. But you really, if you come to the realization, you understand, how great such a thing, you understand, that you get in as a da'iyah or leading to such a thing, this one will start to put, you understand, some energy and some time and some ideas about how we can do this. And like I said, you understand, not praising myself or only give you a practical example. I used to live in Mecca, and who will leave Mecca and go someplace else? So it must be a crazy. Unless you have something else better than Mecca, understand? But the only thing was one single hadith that was always bothering me and always in my mind, and I could not live, you understand, without putting it in action. And actually this is the hadith. This is the only hadith, or the one single hadith that promote me that I have to go someplace else other than Mecca. And since I have little bit English, understand, at such age, I was saying what I'm going to do here, how I'm going to get such a great reward. I want one man to be a Muslim, you understand, as a result of my da'wah. So I started to think about going someplace else. And this is what caused me to come to America. Otherwise, I have a house in Mecca. I live for free, okay? I have my own apartment. I have a job. I have a school. I have everything. Plus, you understand, my entertainment being 2 o'clock in the morning watching the Kaaba every night, while only maybe 5, 6 people making tawaf. How you can leave all these things and go someplace else? But with one thing missing, how you going to give da'wah to everybody's Muslims? You understand? And after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me, understand, and give me what I was thinking about, and came to America. So I think it's something that we need to reflect on it. We put time watching TV, racing with each other about different things, debating with each other. If you start to learn about the importance of a da'wah, and you don't have to be a scholar, but make sure what he's saying is right. One thing the Prophet said, بلغوا عني ولو آية. Convey my message even in the shape of one single verse. Who among us doesn't have it? But we don't have this zeal, we don't have this encouragement. So I really invite myself as well, everybody, that they go and talk and learn and study more about the virtues of da'wah. Now when you know this, now we're going to be using YouTube, Facebook, you stream, you're going to be going to churches, you're going to be going different places, giving a flyer in the street, spending money, try to do everything, or even you could not do, and Allah bless you as well. You will go and hire somebody to do this. Believe it or not, you understand? How many centers in America, they're looking for a scholar, for a sheikh, for an imam. You can be this person. With your own money, you hire them and say, yeah, I pay you, and you go there to this job, go teach them Quran. So I think you understand, we need to emphasize among ourselves about the importance of da'wah and the virtues of da'wah. This is going, because all these tools and everything that he said about today is available for us. You and the mother with all this science and technology and all this, but we using Facebook for what, huh? Put in your picture, you understand, this is my favorite food, my favorite friend, you understand, the teams that, who wins the vote, who. When we're going to change, understand, our website to something about Islam. May Allah reward you. We're looking for part 2, inshallah, from this. Jazakallah khairan.
Before you close, thank you so much. I want you, can you give us advice where to get the resources to educate ourselves on those technical material for the da'wah?
Inshallah, I can, just for everybody's benefit, I can make available to Taleb and Nazif what was requested last time, and anything from here, inshallah, maybe you could, if it's okay with you, make it available to the email list.
Inshallah.
CIC?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Could put it
CIC, inshallah. Make it available. Right, we're going to close now, inshallah, for Salat al-Dhuhr. I assume everybody have wudu, but in case somebody want to catch a wudu before we make salah, we allow about 5 minutes. And inshallah, we play it by ear. I have to go make a phone call, see if the food here or not. If the food here, so inshallah will be immediately after the salah. If not, we'll go for the last and final lecture, and after this we eat. And after this hit the highway or my way. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah reward our speakers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Bless all of you for being here today. Jazakallah khairan.
Sheikh Adly, you put down the CIC.
Yes, sir. It's already there on Facebook. You can go and watch it now.